It is a brutal world that you've created. People die. Families are ruined. It's war. I mean, we are in war when we're reading A Song of Ice and Fire. That is different than a lot of fantasy fiction.
Yes.
What difference is that to you? And you know, you embrace the fantasy genre, but those qualities are different than many fantasy books.
You know, I will say that fantasy is changing, and maybe I had some small part in it changing. If you read some of the younger fantasy writers who have come along in the last 5 years or so, I think their work reflects more of a realism. But you know, the modern fantasy largely grew out of the work of J.R. Tolkien and his great landmark Lord of the Rings, which looms over all fantasy like a mountain, and everybody else is operating in the shadow of Tolkien and what he did. And my admiration for Tolkien and his work is second to none. I think Lord of the Rings is one of the great novels of the 20th century, perhaps the greatest novel of the 20th century, as it was voted recently by the readers of the Guardian, I think, in England, to the fury of some of the people in the literary establishment who wanted it to go to like James Joyce or Nabokov or somebody, and instead it went to Tolkien. But that being said, following Lord of the Rings, fantasy was largely taken over by Tolkien imitators, who were delivering Tolkien-like books, but who didn't seem to capture any of the power of Tolkien and just were borrowing some of his tropes. And some of the things that Tolkien did, which I think worked for him, in the hands of these lesser writers, developed into pretty bad cliches. And you know, the whole thing of the Dark Lord is stirring, and his ugly minions are coming out, and you know they're horrible minions because they're ugly and they wear black, and
Bad.
they have a lot
Super
of
bad.
spikes and stuff on their armor, and you know, and the good guys go forth and they're all like elves and stuff like that, and they're really pretty, and they wear white, and you know, the world is not that simple. Good guys and bad guys is fun when you're 7, but you know, you should look around and see what the world is like and grow more than that. And I wanted to kind of reflect, to weld fantasy with the historical fiction, and which is more gritty and realistic, and to capture some of what I see as the real moral ambiguity of these issues, because real human beings are not. You can't tell the bad people because they're ugly or the good people because they're pretty. And, you know, I deliberately turned some of these conventions on the head. I mean, the Night's Watch, yeah, they're a bunch of scum, but they're heroic scum.
And they're protecting.
And yet they were black, you know, so I was doing that. I took ravens, which, of course, in Tolkien and the Imitators are these birds of ill omen and horrible things, and I made them basically a good thing, a means of flying from castle to castle and delivering messages and so forth. So
Often very
I
bad
was deliberately playing with, and you know, the guys in white, the Night's Watch, or not the Kingsguard, all wear white, but it's an institution that was once heroic but is now hopelessly corrupt, full of political appointees and you know, people who are venal or brutal or greedy and appointed for anything but the original reason. So I was playing with all of the tropes and turning a few things on their head.